Hi, everybody. This is Kevin Delaney. I'm the editor-in-chief of Charter, the Future of Work Media and Research Company. We're just asking you to hang in for another minute. We're getting our speakers lined up for this session on continuous learning imperative, future-proofing your organization's talent strategy. And what we have is a discussion over the next hour about arguably one of the biggest challenges for business right now, which is what is your talent strategy and how to equip your team members, your colleagues, your workers for the greatest performance, relevance, confidence as AI and other factors are actually changing the way work is shaped and business is done. So we have a great panel of folks who are going to be joining us for this discussion, and we're just trying to get them in here to join me. So just hang in there for 1 minute.
Hey, Kevin, can you hear me? Guys, I cannot hear you.
Hi, Fred.
Hi,
Can you hear
Kevin.
me?
Yeah.
Hi.
Well,
Good to see you. Thank you for joining us. We're having the unfortunately too familiar experience that folks have of logging into Zoom and finding that it's more complicated than it should be. So
yeah.
just we have our other panelists joining us in a second, and we'll get started with you.
Okay.
We'll give them another minute. So
Okay.
just hang in there while we're waiting to get started. Fred, where are you in the world today? I know you travel a lot.
No, well, yes, I was not far away. I was in Rome for 2 days. Went back this morning. We kick off
Okay.
a big growth journey event for Europe after Asia and Middle East. And it's linked to the topic we're going to talk about today. So that comes right on time.
Okay, that's great. Well, why don't I know that Mark and Lucretia are about to join us. So why don't we get started, Fred? So
Sure.
as I teed up before for folks who are joining us, the topic today is basically the future of talent strategy given AI and everything else. And part of that, the continuous learning imperative, which is one of the things that organizations like your own are really
Yeah.
focused on. And so the goal over the next hour is to actually work through some of the components of this and actually leave folks with some high-level frameworks for thinking about this, and actually pretty tactical strategies and learnings from the experience of your experience and Lucretia's experience, and what
Yeah.
Mark brings from working with
Yeah.
his colleagues and other executives. So
Sounds good.
we're going to take questions in the Zoom. So I just want to tell folks who are attending that they can put questions in there, and we'll take them throughout and leave some time at the end. And then
Yeah.
also, I should, introduce myself again. I'm the editor-in-chief of Charter, the Future of Research company here, and I'm joined by Fred Patitucci. He is Philip Morris International's Chief People and Culture Officer. Fred is leading a large-scale and sweeping people and culture transformation project alongside PMI's business transformation project. The Charter community has learned a lot from him and his team as a case study and best practices for how to approach this. So, Fred, thanks for joining, and we're gonna dive in as the others join us. And the first, where I want to start, I think, is just a basic question. But how are the skills of the future different from what has traditionally been required, do you think?
Yeah. Thank you very much, Kevin, for the question. And I think this is certainly the question that many CEOs and CHROs are getting lately, especially in the context where the consumer demand is evolving rapidly and the world is moving as well at pace. So I think that the skills of the future are less about what you know and more about what you think, how you adapt, how you connect with others, and importantly, how you learn. So we used to have skills that were rather at standstill, and as the consumer needs evolve, we need to adjust along the journey. And fast forwarding ourselves 5 years from now, it's difficult to figure out what these skills will be. Now, I think what comes across along that transformation that PMI went through is that critical thinking, curiosity, learning appetite, collaborations are becoming paramount to get ready the moment we will figure out what these precise skills are all about. Okay, so let me take two concrete examples of what PMI is doing to get ready. So the first thing is
Great.
that, back to what I was saying earlier on, at the end, it's all about your mindset. What are you doing to adopt this growth mindset? So, as we speak, we are kicking off across the world of PMI, 83,000 people, a kind of
Hmm.
movement where we will connect with the whole organization to trigger this growth mindset, to make sure that people are taking charge of their own learning. We can come with learning curriculum that are rather comprehensive at PMI, but this is just the peak of the iceberg. So what we're trying to convey across the organization is that learning comes with a dose of unknown. Learning comes with a dose of discomfort, and it's okay not to control everything.
Hmm.
It's just about this ability to exercise the muscle on a daily basis so that the moment people know what skills will become critical, they are getting to step in. Skills can get acquired easily. Mindset is much more difficult and complicated. And in
Hmm.
parallel to that, we have been able to map 83,000 employees at PMI around 1,500 job families. And for all these families, job families, we know the skills that we have today. And when we advance people, we are trying to ensure that we are able to assess the gap between where people stand versus where they should be in regard to the skill that will be needed. Okay. And that actually is the moment where AI comes into play, because we are getting as well benchmark from outside, and we are tracking the skills that are sun setting at PMI, the one that are sun rising, and we are becoming much more intelligent when it comes to get our people ready to move to these skills the moment we will know exactly what they're all about. So it's a journey that's going to take certainly 3 to 5 years. It's not a
Hmm.
one-off. The journey is ongoing; it will never stop. But that's more about mobilizing the whole organization on this learning appetite, curiosity, learning agility. So that's in a nutshell what we are doing on your question.
That's great. Thank you. I'm going to pull in Mark in a second, but just want to underscore a few things he said. The first one is that you said we don't actually know the exact skills, let's say for 5 years from now. And so it's about mindset and how the learning agility and learning openness and acknowledging the discomfort as part of that. That's really interesting. And then the other thing that I would point to is just the real shift to skills-based analysis of the current workforce and jobs and using that as a basis for trying to map where you want to go. So those are
All right.
two things we can come back to in different ways. Mark, thank you for joining us. I'm sorry for the trouble getting in, but Mark Fritz is a
No
leadership
worries.
specialist and professor at IE Business School in Spain. I met Mark earlier this year at an international event and was struck by his view into leaders' perspectives and challenges around some of the issues we're talking about and his frameworks that he was using for addressing them. So, Mark, you've just heard at least part of what Fred was saying about what's changing and why. How does the leadership of talent and talent strategy need to look different today based on what you're seeing and how you're advising executives?
I think it was very, very good what Fred mentioned about the mindset and everything. And what I'm seeing that's needed more and more is leaders need to be context providers, right? The AI and other things, the content will be a much easier. And framing the context, having that growth mindset and framing a context that really challenges people to step out of their comfort zones and go make something happen. And the context, if a leader is a great context provider, it frames that the world in a way that their people can make better choices and better decisions on their own. And look at it this way. What you type into Chat GPT is context. What you get back is content and so forth. So it's really, really important for our leaders at all levels, not just the top, but at all levels, to be stronger at being able to frame a context, allowing our people more freedom and utilize these tools. Because AI, just like digitalization, it changes how we're going to do business. We can make decisions earlier, later, different things. It enables the business in a different way. And so to get the most out of it, we have to transform, but we have to transform with that broader mindset and a broader context.
Mark, can you share it when you say context and the importance for leaders of being the people who share and set the context? I often hear like one of the great skills of leadership is storytelling. So like
Yes.
if you can tell a story about the purpose and impact of your business, where you're headed, and then you have to tell the story until have told it so many times you're nauseous and can't actually possibly tell the story one more time. How does when you talk about context and leaders setting the context, how does it fit with that? And what's an example of what it could look like?
Yeah, I mean, you're absolutely correct. The best way to frame a context is through a story and example, and it's really around where and why. It's where we're going, why we're going there. I thought there was a comment years ago where it said it's more important for a vision to be memorable than complete. We complete it in our conversations as we go. And I think it's framing where and why, but also what I'm noticing also in today's world is we need to explain our expectations, on the key bigger outcomes we're trying to drive. In other words, what does good look like? Because your people cannot hit a target they do not understand. And so I found context is really about making very clear where and why in a way that they can personally make a link to it. And then also being clear about our expectations in terms of what we want to see, what's most important to deliver.
So that's like another best practice, which is being clear about goals for people. Where are you headed? What's the end goal? Lucretia, thank you so much for joining us. I'm sorry for the technical problems getting here, but you made it, and we could not be more grateful to have you join this discussion. Lucretia Borganova, she's the Chief Talent and Organizational Effectiveness Officer at MasterCard. Lucretia is a key thought leader and respected people leader in the charter community. And we're just really grateful you're actually able to join us today. So we've kicked it off by talking about the first area of the topic, which is how talent strategy needs to change and how does leadership need to change skills of the future. And Fred talked about some of the things that PMI are doing, including trying to get this learning kind of orientation with people and taking a skills-based approach to determine where they need to go. And Mark has just been talking about the importance of leaders to be providing more context maybe than they traditionally have to help people navigate some of the less certain terrain. So Lucretia, coming to you, how do you see the skills of the future being different, and how does talent strategy at a high level need to change as a result?
Of this, and I really, really apologize for my technical challenges. So
It's
to you,
not,
Kevin, and to can you hear me?
yeah, we can hear you great, and it's I'm
Okay.
sure. Thank you so much for persevering.
Of course, no worries. I think it's one of the skills of the future. Definitely perseverance. So, I got this one. I got this one for
Great.
sure. I think I would echo. I was listening to Fred and Mark, and I think I would echo a lot of the different things that they have shared already. I mean, obviously, we're seeing significant growing demand. I think probably like everybody else listening in when it comes to AI skills. Both in technical as well as in non-technical type of roles. So obviously we're very focused on both acquiring and developing these skills to make sure that our employees are proficient and they're really confident in how they can leverage AI as an amplifier of their work, you know, as a productivity partner, as a career development and a well-being partner. And we want to make sure that we're meeting them no matter where they are in their journey, right? Whether people are, you know, beginners or they are like technical experts. But what I would say that, and I think building on what Fred was saying, I think in addition to our focus on AI and emerging technical skills, we're also equally focused on nurturing what I would call human skills. You know, we talk a little bit of like empathy and critical thinking and curiosity, problem solving, you know, you name it. I think our focus is both kind of like on both technical and human skills alike, because we know that, you know, we're going to need a knowledgeable humans, right, to really make sure that they're taking advantage of AI to its fullest potential. So that's what I would say, I think, on the skills front. And then, you know, how are we thinking sort of like differently as it relates to sort of like how our approach to people sort of like needs to change in light of those emerging skills. I would say that, you know, and something that you and I talked before, Kevin, what probably given, you know, how quickly the talent needs are changing, and I think Fred alluded to this a little bit. You know, we know some of the demand, but the reality is there's a lot that we don't know and remains incredibly unknown. So I think in addition, right, to growing demands for AI talent, skills, and you know, and understanding how AI is going to impact existing roles and the creation of new roles, probably sort of like in that context, you know, our thinking is that workforce agility and flexibility has never been more critical for an organization to remain competitive. So in light of that, then what does that mean for how can you manage talent to create an organization that is going to be much more agile and ready for the future? So to do that, you know, our focus has been on skills. So really, you know, I think building on what the team was sharing before, right? We're definitely working on establishing skills as the currency to make talent decisions end to end, because we know that when we focus on skills, you know, versus, you know, more traditional markers like degrees or experiences or titles, we can respond to the emerging needs of our customers, you know, of the business, and also of our employees and prospective candidates in a much more proactive way.
That's great. There's a bunch there I want to come back to, including the implications of some of the things he just said particularly for early in career workers. And I want to just, before we move to some of those topics, Fred, you've talked about triggering a learning appetite. That's one of the things you're doing. And I'd be interested in both you and Lucretia, like seems like a really smart thing to be doing, but actually accomplishing that, I think, is challenging because you have large scale workforce, you have lots of other stuff going on. other factors. Is there anything that you're finding that's working particularly well to trigger that learning appetite and get, sort of support your folks in moving where you need them to be?
Yeah, thanks, Kevin, for the question. I'll go back to what Mark was talking about earlier on, which is the context and what we call here a bit at PMI the purpose. And it's rather kind of easy for us to bring that in because the purpose is clear. We want to phase out the selling of cigarette over time to replace for consumers that cannot quit nicotine delivery better alternatives. And when you bring this purpose across the whole organization to help the world to get out of health societal concern, which is cigarette, that put our employees on steroids because there is really a cause that everybody is embracing. And to get there, skill-based wise, we cannot stay at standstill. And we need to bring everybody along the way. And to bring everybody along the way, start with the C-suite. Well, actually start with the board, start with the C-suite. And then, since it's a journey that never stops, we start by involving the 1,500 leaders of PMI, and we go physically to meet all the market management teams, so 1,500 people. And then we start cascading that down through the whole organization by bringing HR, by bringing line managers, because line managers are the cornerstone of what I'm talking about. And we are trying again to explain that the superheroes of this world that know it all does not exist. It's over. And living with the unknown, which was not very easy years ago because our business was much more stable, is today the way forward, right? And the whole point is to always be alert on this thing that may change tomorrow and to be ready to embrace things that even we don't know how we're going to deal with. So that's why it's really bringing forward this curiosity, this appetite to challenge status quo. But you cannot challenge status quo if you don't have the right skills at the get-go. So I think that the journey will take us only 2 to 3 years, but at least we land the proper landscape to bring everybody at the same level and to move everybody at the same pace, okay? Because we need to embark all of us in the organization. And we're trying as well to address along the way this notion of reskilling, upskilling, so that employees remain relevant versus becoming obsolete. So obviously that triggers a bit of anxiety, but at the end it's all about transparency and making sure that we will give a chance to everybody, providing that they embrace this learning journey and learning appetite to get a job over time. And if the job doesn't happen at PMI, at least people will be employable to be redeployed outside of PMI. So we have a rather strong stream on people sustainability, because I think this is the role of corporation to ensure that our employees remain relevant over time. Okay, and again, this is not a speed race; it takes years.
We just did a big survey of employees, what they're looking for employers. And one of the things that really popped for us was career growth opportunities. And the best employers we saw in the survey results were ones who are investing in their employees across their careers, whether they actually stayed with them for a significant amount of time. That was among the critical factors. I'd like to come back to a few things you said, including the role of managers. And Fred, what I heard you talk about is working with your 1,500 leaders, and then that being an important way to cascade down. And then we'll come in a few minutes to the role of managers. I also want to encourage folks who are participating to add any questions or comments, reactions you have in the Zoom chat and the Q&A module, and we'll come back to that shortly. Nikresh, I want to, before we hit some of these other things, I just want to ask you more or less the same question I asked Fred, which is in terms of triggering a learning appetite among your teams, are there any tactics or approaches that you're finding are particularly effective to make that happen?
Yeah, I think I would echo a lot of things that that Fred said, and maybe building on that, there's the piece about, we're very purposeful about making sure that employees feel empowered and enabled to own their career, so they can fully unlock their potential. And I think to Fred's point, to also become future ready. I mean, we know that, as part of like our employee listening. We also know that that is very much top of mind for employees as well. So, our focus, some of our big bets, I think from a people standpoint, have been very focused on making sure that we are really sort of like creating scalable solutions that are really democratizing access to very personalized type of learning to our employees. So I think that is also helping drive kind of like higher levels of adoption and helping our employees also embrace this mindset of, kind of like being future ready, taking ownership of their career and of their development, of their growth. So some of the examples that I would share probably on a more kind of like practical standpoint, right, have been our and AI. I think is one of those things that has helped us both kind of like democratize personalized access at scale. And I think in the past we probably would have thought that those two things combined were almost impossible. But I do think that that is kind of like one of the magics of this technology. So I think within MasterCard, we have two examples, right? One is our AI-driven talent marketplace, through which our employees basically get matched to different types of opportunities, depending on the skills they have and the skills they want to develop. And then the other one is as it relates to, our recently launched basically coach for everybody. So we're giving everybody also an AI-powered coach so that employees can, continue growing on their ability to have really powerful conversations, right? Whether you're a people leader, and I know we're going to be talking about people leaders, right? But whether you're a people leader and you want to make sure that you're having a really impactful development conversation, or if you're an employee and, you want to talk to your manager about, how do I continue to advance and grow my career? Or, in the spirit of what we call at MasterCard, say what do you mean? You want to have a very constructive conversation with a colleague, right? Now you have a partner in AI that can really help not only augment your effectiveness, your productivity, but really also, help be a partner in your career growth and development, and, ensuring that you are becoming like a contributing and a valuable, member of the MasterCard organization moving forward.
I like that phrase, say what you mean. And what I'm hearing is that AI is allowing you to personalize and provide support to probably a greater number of workers as a result at MasterCard. Mark, I want to take sort of two questions to you from your working with executives. What learning habits or formats actually help leaders build the new capabilities they need? And then maybe you can launch us into this other topic, which is middle managers, line managers. How do you take the sort of learning skills change at the highest level and make sure that strategy gets all the way through the organizations, with the middle managers as a particularly important constituency in making that happen?
Yeah, I think, in terms of leadership, it's something we always are striving to get better at, all the time. And the key is, leaders don't have big blocks of time where they can do their self-development. It's a matter of, picking up things. And I always say is that they're trying to pick up the life and utilize the life experiences of others, because that helps their business judgment, et cetera. And so packaging the learnings in a way that they can take it in fairly quickly. And a lot of times it's great listening to interviews of executives talk, because they're never going to give you a long explanation on anything. They're going to jump to a story or an example which illustrates the point. I tell you, the two skills I see that are absolutely key to keep growing at each level of the organization is to keep growing people's business judgment and their influencing skills, because we need people to be able to make decisions at all levels and make decisions faster as the world goes faster. And, if you leverage the life experiences of others, you're making judgments not based on only your experiences, you're leveraging the learnings of others. And there's an old saying, it says, we don't make good decisions. We take decisions and then we make them good. And so we need the influencing skills to execute those things. And so what I found is that whenever you have a focus of learning on those two particular skills, you're growing people who can handle the future in a much better way too.
That's really interesting. And I think that connects to what Lucretia was saying about human skills, because what you described,
Yeah,
business judgment, and influencing skills are both uniquely human things.
exactly.
You're not getting those from ChatGPT. Fred, this question of the middle managers and the line managers, you referred to them when you were talking earlier. And what do you see? How do you approach that? Like you could have a great strategy at your level, 1500 leaders level. But if it stops there and the line managers aren't part of this people transformation and future proofing strategy for your workforce, it's really challenging. I know a lot of organizations struggle with that. Is there anything that you're finding is particularly effective there?
Yeah, well, Kevin, to your point, we can have the best strategy, but at the end, what matters is the way you execute your strategy, and middle
Yeah,
management is the cornerstone of the business at the end to make things happen. So back to my earlier example, once we have reached this 1,500 senior leaders in the organization, so it has to penetrate further down. So we have on the growth mindset, on the bank of skills, on the skills by organization, we have engagement session, communication session, training session all over the world. So that's why it takes time, and it doesn't happen over the next 6 months. And these people need to understand the context under which we are, why we are doing so, because we all agree on the call that what matters at the end is to ensure that you have the right mix of people to make things happen from a business plan standpoint, right? And we have been often during the C-suite discussion when we talk about talent management, where we're short of people, and we want to avoid to be short of people or making choices by default, because at the end that harms the business. So it's a mobilization, it's a movement actually that we have created over the last 18 months in the organization. And we have as well a lengthy talent management process that starts usually in Feb, ends in July with the CEO talent review. And we are scanning across market, region, function, categories, the people that are combining the right technical skills with the core values that every leader needs to display in the organization. So it takes time, it takes money, obviously, but the people agenda is becoming a business imperative, and it sounds like a cliche, but at the end, it has to happen. Otherwise, we're going to be in trouble. And as a public company, we want to avoid being in trouble. So, and more, we have investors asking questions about talent management, about culture. And I'm happy actually that the investors start asking questions to PMI
that's
about this
great.
topic. Yeah, this is a gift for HR actually.
Yeah, and people are the biggest lever of value creation at a lot of companies, and including the ones here. We're getting some great questions, so we're going to come back in a few minutes. We'll shift over and work through some of those questions. There are a few things I want to make sure we touch on before then, though. One of them is early career workers, and we're hearing a lot about the challenges there, partly because some of the tasks that early career workers traditionally have performed are can be done by generative AI reasonably well in a lot of cases. Lucretia, I want to ask you, as AI increasingly takes on some of these tasks, how are you designing meaningful growth opportunities and roles for early career talent?
Yeah, and I know we're running out of time. Can I give you a nugget on the people leader for a second, and then I'll jump into early career?
Yeah, that's great. Go for it. And we have time.
The one thing that I have found, that we have found also incredibly helpful is sort of like in helping sort of like empower and enable people leaders, right, to play the role that we need them to play, right, and be sort of like the best version of themselves, in particular in those key moments that matter in the employee life cycle, is assessing their people leader effectiveness. So as part of like our employee listening, we kind of like give them just in time feedback following those critical moments that matter in the employee life cycle, right? So whether it is after you had your year-end conversation, whether it is after you had your development conversation or your expectation setting conversation, right? So we ask employees some really critical questions that then after that, the people leader can sort of like assess their effectiveness, can get that real-time feedback. And also we give them a couple of different tools, inclusive of, the AI coach that we just talked about, that can provide, some sort of like real-time aid to the people leader in a very targeted way. So we found that sort of like helps reinforce the expectations that we have of people leaders, but also helps continue to equip them and become just continuously better. And, so the people leaders can get, real-time feedback as it relates to the impact, right, of those conversations, right? To what extent their employees feel like, that the company is investing in their growth and their development, and back to the conversation about being relevant, right? To what extent do employees feel like the company is investing, or that they feel like they are becoming, right, a contributing member of the Mastercard family. So I personally find that incredibly, valuable for people leaders, and so has been the feedback from them.
And we have some
So-
questions about how you're using AI coaching that we'll come to in a few minutes. And then
So
the
answering your
question,
question,
the other question, is about early career talent.
I think that, I think it's a really interesting question, because there's a lot of conversation as it relates to that. And, for us, a little bit, as I shared before, we don't really see AI as a threat to early career opportunities. I think we kind of like embrace it more as a catalyst for reimagining, what early career opportunities look like for us as an organization. So it's really shifting, obviously shifting the nature of work, and we're redesigning the roles that shift with it. And we make it very clear, not only to our early career talent, but also to all of our employees, that, we don't see AI as a replacement. We see it as a growth partner. And obviously, we know that there are certain tasks that will be automated, by AI, and we continue to monitor the impact of AI on all different roles and, critical job families that we have in the organization, right? Whether we're talking about, individuals that provide internal support or reporting type of roles, for example, right? So we continue to being very proactive in identifying those opportunities, right, and upskilling and reskilling our employees. At the same time, right, as we recruit early career talent, our focus is similar to what we were talking about before. Is number one, we want to increase their confidence in how to leverage AI to augment their effectiveness, and as a career partner, as a well-being partner. And both in two ways, right? One is obviously these tech skills that we were talking about. So, embedding AI literacy very early on in their experience. So we have, as part of like our early career program that we call Launchers, being digitally fluent is something that is introduced very early on, as well as, people really understanding the foundations of our technology ecosystem and how we're using AI to drive innovation. But at the same time, as we talked about before, we differentially invest in this technology and want to make sure that, again, that they are very kind of like fluent in AI and related technologies. At the same time, we're equally focused on these human skills that we were talking about, right? So we early in career as well, right? We make sure that, we invest in problem solving and adaptability, some of the things that we were talking about, data-driven decision-making, asking some really good questions, because we know that at the end, that is going to continue to differentiate them as they continue to grow their career. So that it's a little, and I'm happy to expand a little bit more on that.
That's great. Thank you.
Really the approach I would take.
We're gonna go to questions in a few minutes, but Fred, I want to ask you about that, and then Mark, I'm going to pull you in, but about this, how you're preparing your workforce for the impacts of generative AI, not just in terms of tools, but how people work and make decisions, and including if you're thinking about early career workers in any specific way.
Yeah. Well, the first thing that we did 12 months, 18 months ago was to bring actually Gen AI across the organization by an education approach, making sure that we were demystifying what AI is and it's not, along the line that we were talking about earlier on. And then we decided to actually have a bottom-up approach on the 100 few use cases we have at AI. So that has helped employees to feel less uncomfortable or less a bit of discomfort. So, and after 18 months, since we have seen few traction across the world of PMI, we decided to be much more intentional on these use cases linked to the business. So 18 months have been rather to get familiar with what AI brings and doesn't bring, and making sure that all decisions we're taking on the business were made in a responsible and ethical manner, because this is the biggest pitfall that may slow down over time AI, which I think will not happen, but this is a big watch out.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, we don't see for now, and we've been hearing that a lot out there, the impact on AI in terms of efficiency gains. The work gets done differently in the organization, but we didn't come with big saving on the overhead. Let's put the fish on the table. That's what we are expecting. But over the last 18 months, we didn't see major disruption from a workforce standpoint. So the job gets done differently, suddenly smartly. We take better informed decision. We train the machine learning. These use cases are getting upgraded day after day. But for now, I would say I would qualify the level of adoption from early career stage back to what we're talking about up to the senior level. We don't see a pushback. What we are getting in the adoption mode, back to my point, always in the context of the unknown. So obviously people are concerned that there may be impact, hence the need to instill these growth mindsets to get ready to be redeployed the moment it's going to happen. But when it's going to happen, we don't have the answer yet.
And I think your observation matches a lot of experience, and across large-scale economic analysis, we're seeing in the range of 3-4% productivity improvements when looked across business types, while some businesses are seeing more significant improvements. That's kind of how it's averaging out, which sounds like it's. Mark, what are you just heard all this in the context of early in career workers, how you prepare your workforce for AI, how you lead talent. What are the best practices you're seeing in terms of bringing AI in and doing the training, but actually thinking about how people work and make decisions at a more fundamental level as well?
Yeah, I think what was said was really, really key here is bring the training and the knowledge in a way that people are going to be confident in using it, right? So the confidence that way. The thing that I see in best practices is creating projects that look at the opportunities in using it, because projects can often cross organizations and you start to see much more transformations and everything. And you can create small, medium, and large projects in a way that you can really pull in your best talent at each of the levels and give them a challenge. And you start to see much quicker people's abilities in a project environment than you do the day-to-day. And they grow 10 times faster in that environment as well. So not all of them are going to work, but you're also going to get a double win. You're going to get some exploitation of how AI could go across different organizations, but also you get very visible and see how good your people are. And I think that's where I see the world utilizing projects much, much more to get those cross-organizational transformations happening faster.
That's really interesting, particularly if they're different sizes, like super audacious goals or very specific projects, and you can test your teams in addition to stretching them. I think we've
just
got
one quick one on that. Just one
go
quick
ahead.
one is that if you have small, medium, and large projects happening all the time, your culture begins to feel that change is normal. And that is really a positive impact, I think. Yeah.
That's great. We've got a bunch of great questions, so I'm going to dive into them. And one of them from Olivia Kawuma is, one of the challenges I've faced in trying to trigger the learning appetite in teams is the time constraint. Even with the feelings of ownership and understanding, there's a challenge of balancing learning and the daily work that must be done. How do you address this balance? Fred, you talked about learning appetite. Do you have a view on how you address like people having the work to be done, but also
Yeah.
needing
I think it's a
to?
very fair question, a relevant question, because I've been hearing that as well across the organization. And at the end, I'm going to state something very obvious. Learning is not only about training. Training is the visible part of the iceberg. And back to what we were saying earlier on, all companies have a rather comprehensive training curriculum. But what matters the most when you learn is to offer to our talent stretching assignment, stretching project that put them outside of the comfort zone. And yesterday, during the event we had for Europe, I was advising the senior leaders, if your management comes with an offer for you to go on the next move, and if you feel you don't get stretched enough, don't take the job. Because very often we are rather conservative on the way we think talent can progress. But the moment you put this talent on stretching assignments, they blossom. And obviously, you need to provide the right safety net, and that you learn a big deal versus what you can learn by going to INSEAD or Wharton or IMD. So that's something that I don't discard. This is important, the academic knowledge, obviously. But when you get the right project, the right assignment, training is becoming almost secondary. Okay, and everybody can easily get overwhelmed by the learning offered by any corporation. So hence, we are trying as well to be much more targeted in terms of learning experience by persona. So we don't shoot across the globe for everybody. So depending on the career stage, we are much more intentional when it comes to technical skills, business skills, meta skills, leadership skills. And employees are becoming much more clear about what they need in the context of what we see them evolving 5 years down the road. So the career planning at PMI is not for the next 12 months, it's for the next 5 years. And we backtrack what needs to be addressed in terms of gaps along the 5-year journey. So that's
great.
Going to achieve.
Thank you. Go ahead. And then I have a question for you about AI coaching. So jump in.
I think maybe I'm just going to answer that question in a way, but I think building on what Fred was saying, maybe the 3 other things that I would say is, one is, I think technology, kind of like how can you really leverage technology to make AI, kind of like learning in the flow of work. So I think that technology is evolving to do that. So it kind of like really feels part of kind of like being more embedded and integrated in your work versus feeling as something completely separate. And then I think the piece about being contextual, I think is really important. One of the lessons learned that probably we have from driving really great adoption of like AI is how do you make it more contextual? So how do you contextualize it in the context of, some of your critical job families and the work that people do? And then last, I would say that, you can sort of like democratize access and personalize access to employees. We also have to know that, people will not always, have the time to work on kind of like their growth under development. I think the important thing is for people to know, right, that things will be available when they're ready to also, take part on and invest in their growth and their development.
That's great. There's a question from Allison McCumbee about how the AI coach works, and is this an external solution or something MasterCard had developed? And then we have a question from Ken Bascom, which maybe you can address at the same time, which is about security and privacy confidentiality concerns in implementing AI. And I know MasterCard, as a financial services business, probably has plenty of thoughts on that.
We very much adhere to all of our AI principles, which obviously safety and security are an important part of that. So all of basically the interactions that people have with the AI coach are like confidential, right? So they are definitely sort of like this one-on-one engagement. Like the only thing that we would know at a company perspective would be sort of like some of the themes, right? And some of the most common use cases that people would be using sort of like the AI coach for, right? Whether it is about, preparing for, annual performance management type of conversations, right? Or having difficult conversations with a colleague or solving a problem. So it's more like themes that we would have access to, as well as, obviously levels of adoption across different levels of the organization. But the one of the things that I think is helping us drive adoption is like people know that is, it's a personalized confidential information to have with this AI coach for sure. And it is an external partner, so it's not a MasterCard accredited solution. So I'm happy to whomever wants to reach out to share more details on this.
Okay, that's great. Mark, a question from Keegan Evans. The earlier point about the increasing importance of a leader's role to communicate context in a rapidly changing world feels crucial. What messages, principles, frameworks are you seeing which lead to success, which both resonate with talent and their immediate anxiety and create a durable culture change, which sets the organization up to stay ahead well into the future? So Keegan is plus oneing your point and asking for some of the themes that actually are proving effective.
Yeah, it's very interesting, and I've noticed this with a couple key leaders, is they have the ability to explain where we're going with different mile markers down the road. Some of your people can see 5 miles down the road and they can see that and picture it and personally relate to it. Some of your younger people can only see the next 400 yards. And I think what the most powerful way when they frame a context on what we're trying to achieve and when and so forth is they kind of have those milestone markers with respect to stories and examples about where we're heading that each person in the organization can kind of relate to that at different levels too. And I think the better they are at describing the steps, the more they engage everybody in the whole organization versus just have the endpoint only as something that might not be relevant for people.
And I've seen some research that supports this, which is around this idea of scenarios and perspection, and the idea that one of the things that leaders can do in moments of uncertainty is say that we may not know exactly where we're heading, but here are the scenarios that we believe are most likely, which gives workers confidence that their leaders are actually engaged and gives them some ways to start thinking about it. Fred, there's a question here about performance reviews and measuring performance, which I know is something a lot of organizations, are trying to figure out. We just were writing about a company called Foursquare, which has actually shifted towards more team-based performance evaluations because of the change than individual, because of the way that they work and some of the changes to workplaces. We have a question from Joseph Sutherland, which is, within your organizations, are any of your performance review processes evolving away from backward-looking assessments towards more forward-looking skills, need, training, development opportunities going forward? Fred, how are you thinking about the performance part of it and how that needs to change?
Yeah, well, when we look at the way the work gets done at PMI, 10 years ago, we were very vertically driven. And this notion of collaboration, co-creation was not that relevant. And when you look at our product base today on our portfolio, it is impossible that one individual can make it all. So we need to embark at the get-go on upstream, downstream, people from life sciences, from R&D, product development, route to market. And since it was not really embedded in our DNA, we decided to break a bit the way the performance review is being done by bringing 30% proportion on the overall assessment on the how. How do you work? How do you behave? How do you display collaboration, team spirit? How do you go for the greater good that you're on? Because at the end, everybody might be right individually, but we may be wrong collectively. So we have brought that already a few years ago. The next step would be ideally to formalize the team-based performance review, which comes with its own share of challenges. But this is something that we are contemplating. So we are 70% assessed on the what, 30% on the how. And the how is about 3 key values. We care, we are better together, we are game changers. And that brings
Yeah.
this notion of team cohesion in a more formal way than in the past. So we're getting there.
Yeah, that's great. We just have a few minutes left, and I want to jump over to some last thoughts from each of you. The question I have for you is, we've talked at different levels about these issues, but is there one action a people or business leader can take tomorrow to better future-proof their talent strategy? Thinking about your peers, like what's the learning that you would share with them? Mark, maybe we'll start with you, and then Lucretia, and then Fred. Mark, what's the one thing you seek that could be most impactful?
The most impactful is getting your leaders to be able to see the world in more colors, to have critical thinking, systemic thinking, and to be able to think about the options, the scenarios, and then have the judgment to pick one to go forward. So I think it's being able to see the world in colors and to be able to influence the colors in the world to make it happen.
Great, thank you. Lucretia, is there one thing you advise peers in terms of future-proofing your talent strategy?
Yeah, I would say that we're living in unprecedented times that require kind of bolder thinking, bolder solutions. Us to sort of like reimagine the new and the different. So I would say, don't be afraid of like challenging the status quo, but do so in a very practical and business-oriented fashion, right? Start with the why. What is the problem that you're solving for? And do it in a as simple as possible way. And then from there, taking a test and learn approach.
Great. So business-minded, boldness, test and learn. Fred, is there a thing that you think could be most impactful as people approach future-proofing talent?
Fully agree on what Mark and Lucretia have said. The biggest pitfall when it comes to build your talent bench is to always go for the short-term easy solution, i.e. having the temptation to backfill a role when you have to agree at the get-go, when you propose a job to somebody, what is next after next? Because if you don't have a bit of forward looking, you may solve a solution for the short term, but be in trouble 5 years down the road. And this is very difficult when you run your fiscal year, when you need your talent here and now. And the whole tension that we have at the talent reviews is to bet for the short term or the mid-long term. And that obviously brings a healthy tension in the organization. That's how we can advance the talent agenda in the organization.
Yeah, that's great. I'm hearing a lot of boldness, looking forward, not just filling roles. A lot of takeaways for me from this discussion about acknowledging the uncertainty, triggering learning, agility, using projects of different sizes across organizations, particularly around AI, to both build and assess talent. Learning is not just about training, getting people outside their comfort zones, the human skills that Lucretia and Mark in particular talked about, including business judgment and influencing skills. So there's so many great takeaways from this discussion. Thank you all. Thanks everybody for joining us, and just want to thank especially for the time they spent with us and the insights they've shared, Lucretia Borganova, Chief Talent and Organizational Effectiveness Officer at MasterCard, Mark Fritz, he's a leadership specialist and professor at IE Business School in Spain, and Fred Patitucci, PMI's Chief People and Culture Officer. So thank you to three of those. We had some great questions, and thank you everyone else for joining us. Hope we can continue this discussion. Again, I'm Kevin Delaney. I'm editor-in-chief of Charter, and you can find us online, including videos from this discussion at charterworks.com. Thank you, everybody. Have a great day.
Many thanks, Kevin.